Yeah.
I'm just checking that word.
I think it does, yeah. I am Rachel, and this is Hannah, and we work together under the name Low Profile, and we've been doing that for the last 15 years. So for the majority of that time, we have been living in this excellent city called Plymouth, which helpfully is not Portsmouth, but we did have to make a badge to help tell people that. And it's a small city on the border between Devon and Cornwall in the southwest of England. So today we're going to talk a bit about how we kind of made the decision to move to Plymouth, how it's shaped our attitude as artists who work to make things happen where we live, and about 3 different projects or kind of strands of projects. One is talking about residencies that we've made for ourselves, self-made residencies. One is a group project called Come to Ours, and one is our most recent artist-led project, Jamboree 2018, which we did this summer. So when we decided, or like actively decided at least, to move to Plymouth in about 2005, there was very little visual arts culture in the city at the time. So we found it quite hard to find other visual artists, and we had to spend a lot of time and a lot of energy defending Plymouth and our reasons for making our home there.
Sorry.
So when we made that decision to be in Plymouth, we did that for a number of reasons.
Ignore that.
Yeah, ignore that big thing across the top. So one of the reasons that we wanted to live there was we had a strong sense that we would actually be able to get jobs in the city. So something that is coming up from all of our speakers this morning is that, as artists, we also have to have jobs that pay us. We knew that it would be an affordable place to live, so like a lot cheaper than other cities in the UK at the time. We knew that it would be a nice place to live, that it's by the sea and surrounded by amazing countryside. And we knew that there was very little going on there in terms of like contemporary art practice, which meant that we could actively contribute to making stuff happen there. So that was quite attractive to us. And since we started working together, we've also established like a strong track record for setting up lots of different artist-led projects. And in many ways that all started because of that decision to be located in a place that didn't have everything that we needed, and feeling compelled to actually change that situation for ourselves and for others.
So when we started out, we read this piece of advice in an AN publication. When you finish university, go home and find the artist-led space in the place that you live in and get involved. If it doesn't exist, set one up yourself. So, being the massive keeners that we are, we took this advice really seriously. It stuck with us, and you could say we took it pretty literally. So in our work together as artists and in our other roles in the city within education and the arts, so I'm a curator, Rachel works in education in other ways, we've done whatever we can to contribute to making the city a better place for artists to be based, and therefore a better place for people to experience culture. So we've made self-made residencies with friends and peers on campsites, in Airbnbs, in our homes and places of work. We've made self-made projects in our city run out of pubs, late-night takeaways, department stores, a lighthouse, museum, art college and a nightclub. We've trained interns and volunteers, we've sat on boards, we've protested in the streets for more and better culture, we've set up CICs, we've worked the events, we've run the bar, we've made the snacks. We've cooked for people, we've hosted, we've offered beds, we've made studio spaces in our homes, in cafes, in libraries, in old shops and empty offices. We've found ways to keep going, and we've done that by getting together with other people and making stuff happen. So, of course, none of this is easy. Being an artist isn't easy. Being an artist that makes stuff happen isn't easy. Being in a place that is still lacking so much in terms of arts, infrastructure and ecology isn't easy. So today we're here to share some of the tactics that we've developed to survive as artists. So rather than talking you through each one of these, you can see up projected behind me, we're going to share just a couple of case studies of artist-led projects that we've produced that address or are informed by these tactics. So Tom's just handing out a handout, and throughout the presentation, those tactics are written on that handout, and so perhaps through this presentation you can cross-reference and see how many of the tactics that feature in our case studies are kind of feature on the handout. You'll also see on the handout that there's a prompt to ask me anything, that's like a plural me. And so at the end, please do, there's going to be a bit of time, so please do ask us questions. We'll be super honest. We'll tell you everything that we can about what it is to do these projects and the other things that we do. So we'll just let those get handed out.
And that really is an invitation, like an Ask Me Anything invitation. We'll tell you the things.
So write things down, get ready to shout them out at the end.
Has anyone not got one over here? It feels really like school.
Yeah.
It feels like a proper lecture. Got your handouts. So, although over the years we've undertaken a number of more like formal or traditional residencies and exhibitions and commissions with like established arts organisations, today we're going to focus on some of the more alternative approaches that we've kind of worked through for how artists can work with each other in supportive ways. So these approaches initially grow out of artist-led and self-initiated models, and some of them are run with and some of them are run without organisational supports. And there are also larger projects like Jamboree that we'll talk about at the end that's built in partnership with organisations and funders and lots of different people coming together. So as artists who juggle other jobs, we've always struggled to carve out time to get away from our home city of Plymouth to attend residencies or other networking events or great things like this today. So it's been something that we've had to take like a DIY approach to resolving or solving for ourselves. In 2010, we set up a DIY camping residency with the artists Hunt and Darton, who have often used these kind of like thematic DIY residencies themselves as a fuel for developing new work. So prior to the one that we did with them, they'd done ones on like a horse riding holiday and a golfing holiday and these different kind of retreat residencies. So we've known Hunt and Darton for a really long time, and the four of us really value and trust the critical and creative input and insights that we can offer each other. So this kind of model of setting up a residency is affordable and resourceful. It offers things like cheap and flexible accommodation, you can see here. So our tents become our sleeping and our social and our workspaces. It doesn't require or rely on any external funding or permissions. It offers us complete freedom to shape the structure and the nature of our intensive time working with and alongside each other. And also making this opportunity for ourselves and thinking about what our own circumstances and our own needs are has led to quite a few different things. So like on this, for example, this kind of camping residency, that led for us as Low Profile to developing and presenting new work as part of In Between Time Festival in 2010 in Bristol. And for Hunt and Darton, you'll see this great Venn diagram, which is the start of what went on to be the Hunt and Darton Cafe. So it allowed them to work out initial stages of shaping the cafe project, which has gone on to be awarded like substantial strategic funding from the Arts Council and continues to tour nationally. Then one of those other kind of crossovers is that when Hunt and Darton set up the cafe, they commissioned us to create their loyalty scheme for the cafe. So you can see two people here becoming loyal, which continues to travel, and other work, so this piece, Survival Shelf, which has also gone on to tour with the cafe, and we've shown different versions of it in gallery exhibitions and things like that. So I guess that kind of nepotism that was being talked about earlier, how we could think about that with artists supporting artists, how that becomes around artist-led models. So through this simple thing of us coming together for 4 days, it allowed both us and Hunt and Darton to work in a focused way on things that had been bubbling up in our practices and get these ideas shaped into new work and a whole load of new projects. So super productive for us in that sense.
So the camping residency was also in part inspired by the ethos of the DIY series organised by the Live Art Development Agency, which has the tagline "Professional Development Projects by Artists for Artists" across the UK. And they'd commissioned us to run a DIY workshop the year before. LADA offers artists the chance to create their own professional development projects, and by do so recognises that it is artists who are best positioned to do this. So artists don't create networking workshops or web design workshops. They make workshops about how to deal with the leftovers of a practice. They make workshops with Elvis impersonators. They make workshops aboard yachts and about collaborating with the weather. They share knowledge, experience, resources and skills. In a similar way, in 2016, we set up the Plymouth-Pier Residency, where we invited 3 other artists to join us for a long weekend in Plymouth to get together, to share practice, design activities for each other and discuss challenges. So we asked each of the artists that we'd invited to invite another 3 artists, so that there were 8 of us in total, expanding the network of people that we knew. We put everybody up in our spare rooms, we pooled our resources to buy food and to get access to free space at Plymouth University, and we did that under the radar via Beth, one of the participants who's doing her PhD there at the time, and could just book rooms, which is great. So for us, these self-made approaches to residencies allow us to still engage in the type of important, focused, critical periods of reflection that more formal residencies offer, but to do this completely on our own terms and in a way that is manageable around our practice, our jobs and our lives more generally.
So, this approach to kind of working with whatever we've got access to is also mirrored in making this project come to ours, where we worked with 6 other artists to develop and run a 3-month-long artist-driven programme of exhibitions, interventions and events that temporarily occupied unusual and unconventional sites, spaces and contexts around Plymouth, running alongside British Art Show 7 in the autumn and winter of 2011. So we set up Come to Ours as a project because the British Art Show was coming to Plymouth, and that was a big deal at the time, like, you know, backwater Plymouth having this big art show coming. So it was kind of putting the city on the map for other people and for other people outside of our kind of area and our region. So we realised that Plymouth would be getting far more attention than it usually did, that people would be travelling to see the exhibitions, and that we could perhaps piggyback on that excitement and have an easier time getting an audience for our work. So at the time, having a British Art Show in the city also meant that all of the available exhibition spaces were full, kind of housing that exhibition, which is always quite humorous. So we'd need to be resourceful. creating our own platform to make and show work and find interesting and creative ways to do it. So as a group, all of us set up an exhibition and the Library of Independent Exchange in unused retail spaces. Specially commissioned badges that we made were on sale in 5 of our favourite pubs. Video work was on show in a local takeaway. An online sound project mapping what passers-by were listening to on their headphones, and a new gallery set up in the fireplace of Hannah's bedroom that staged micro-exhibitions by emerging and established artists every Sunday for 3 months. So, through everything we've done, including things like Come to Us, we've also learned a lot about ourselves and have grown to understand that as an artist or as artists who make things happen, that your energy and willingness changes, that what you are and aren't willing to put up with changes. And that might be things like living in a youth hostel for a month, like Hannah and I did on our first professional residency. Or yeah, it's quite stinky. Or opening up your house every weekend for 3 months without a break, like Hannah did here for Come to Us, and you realise that your capacity to do different types of activity changes, and that you adopt what you are and aren't willing to put in, as well as what you are and aren't willing to put up with. So sometimes this might be to do with getting paid for the activity that you're undertaking. At times you might just want to and be able to work unpaid to make things that are exciting to you happen. But at other times it might be completely unfeasible for you, and you might have to prioritise spending ages and clearing your diary to write the funding application so that you and everyone else that is working on the project gets paid properly.
So we regularly check in with ourselves, with each other, and with the other people that we're working with about where they're at with different commitments and priorities, what we want to do, and what we can realistically put into projects that we'd like to make happen, what we're willing to sacrifice to achieve different things, and what challenges that we might face. So we try to prioritise time for reflection and thinking through why we're pursuing different things at different times, what we're saying yes and no to, and importantly, what we need from the process, what we need to get back, so that the projects, to make sure that it's the right thing to be doing, spending our time and energy on. So we also agree things that we don't want to happen, situations that we don't want to find ourselves in, and what we're not willing to put up with.
We've got some disappeared pictures, but you'll just have to imagine. So around 2014, 2015, Hannah and I were spending a lot of time working on longer term projects that were based in the southwest, kind of participatory things that needed us there a lot of the time. So we were struggling to regularly travel or make work outside of the region, and importantly, we were struggling to meet other artists and tell people about what we do and our work and our projects. So by default, we felt that our network was becoming really localised, and although we do really love living and working in Plymouth, we really wanted to connect with artists and curators across the country. So again, we thought about what we had available to us and how we could be resourceful in kind of tackling this situation. So we came up with the idea of Jamboree, and initially there might even be some people who are in this first version of Jamboree right here in this room. So initially this took the shape of a small residency in 2015 for 16 people, run out of Plymouth Arts Centre, and this summer, 3 years after that initial version, it grew into a 4-day event where we brought together 150 artists, curators and programmers from across the UK to co-deliver a weekend-long programme of presentations, micro-exhibitions, activities and discussions to share the practice.
So the first iteration of Jamboree was super lo-fi and was made possible when we brought our idea to Vicky Pier. So she was then the assistant curator at Plymouth Arts Centre and also leading the Artist Associate scheme there called Pack Home. So Vicky said yes to us when we asked her if we could invite some artists to come for a residential weekend and to camp out in the building. And not only did Vicky say yes, she also set about helping us to pull together support from other associate schemes. So together, a number of schemes ended up helping us to bring 16 participants to take part in that first Jamboree. She also helped us to bring AN, the Artist Information Company, on board, whose support has been crucial to Jamboree being able to run. So they helped us to cover the cost and sent someone along to report on the project, which really helped us reach a much wider audience than we'd have been able to do on our own. So after we had a break, I had a baby, we took a little bit of maternity leave, we got back into the studio to work out what was next. And around the same time, Anne got back in touch with us to ask us what we were going to do with Jamboree, to encourage us to take the project further and to offer us support in the form of a mentor, Lucy Day. And also, crucially, to offer us some vital match funding to help us get started. So this was like a massive kick up the arse and essential backing, which led us to achieving such a massive project in 2018. We really hadn't planned, you know. We didn't know
when
we
like
did
this.
the tiny version. That, you know, that was very much planned in response to a set of needs. How can we make this situation better for ourselves and hopefully better for other people? And, you know, I think coming back from maternity leave especially, we're kind of probably floundering a little bit at that point, thinking what we're going to do now. We've had a little bit of time off, 4 months, not a lot. You know, and that invitation was really important. It's really important to make invitations to each other. I've freestyled there. So from the outset with Jamboree, we wanted to shape the event so that it operates in the spirit of generosity, friendship and camaraderie, and recognises the realities that artists and those involved in making things happen in the visual arts face. So we're just going to really briefly show you, hopefully this is going to work, an overview video that we made of Jamboree 2018, which is like 3 minutes long, that will hopefully describe what it might have been like to be there. Some people are here that were there, so you can also ask them. Yeah.
Do you remember when it was sunny? Back in the old days.
So I'm Hannah Rose. And I'm Rachel Dobbs. We worked together as Low Profile and we initiated and curated the Jamboree project. So Jamboree 2018 is a gathering of artists and curators who have come from across the country to the Darterton estate for a 4-day programme that has been built by the participants. So the people that have attended the event have also been running different sessions as part of it. So walks and talks, 2020 presentations, workshops, camp shop, miniatures exhibition. So lots of things that participants have either brought with them or are presenting or testing out at Jamboree.
It's been really amazing to be in a space with such a big group of artists and producers from across the country and just have the time and space to just have conversations and hang out and see what happens. I've met lots of fantastic people. It's been a really lovely atmosphere to do that. Just the kind of shared silences, so the silent swim yesterday and the silent communal making session were weirdly convivial. They're just a very kind of relaxed and informal way of meeting people.
The thing that I've really enjoyed the most is it doesn't feel as kind of forced as the word network implies. Actually having 3.5 solid days to spend with other artists and curators who I might have heard about, and to spend time getting to know their practices through the walks and talks and 2020 presentations has just been really valuable.
When you get to go along to the 2020, so you're getting a really good glimpse of who that person is, what they're doing, what they're currently working on, and instantly know if you want to connect or talk, and I think that's it. There's potential for the future, and I think that's a really wonderful take home.
this would be way beyond anything I could imagine, I think. But this is the sort of thing that I'm interested in doing, like artist-led projects. There's been a lot of learning about how different people go about things, and I think that's translatable across the board.
And the highlight's just been the kind of general community aspect of it, and just having these chance conversations, connecting with people. Really enjoyed the walks. Obviously, Dartington's just like a beautiful estate, so it's just been so nice to just be able to spend so much time just outside whilst kind of still connecting. And
I had such a great day yesterday. I got up, I did yoga in the morning, I went on walks, I went on talks. I went swimming in the river, I sat and ate pizza and I drank wine.
Nice. Yay! Good. So we haven't stopped talking yet. Yeah, which one have we?
Sneak peek there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I haven't to scroll.
No, that's great. It's no worries. That's what you just saw. So as we were kind of saying in the video, this jamboree thing uses a range of formats and program strands that are set up to allow artists and curators to get to know each other, to learn more about each other's work, to discuss ideas, and, as you could hear there, to relax, to actually just chill out. So there are things like seminars by invited artists and curators, where participants get a chance to learn about and discuss specific areas of interest, themes or creative processes. There are walks and talks, where an artist or a curator leads a group on a walk and discussion focused around a specialist subject area, a topic or an obsession that surrounds, comes from and informs their practice. There are also the 2020 talks, which are quick-fire presentations for artists and curators to introduce their practice and their projects to the audience at Jamboree. There's the communal making sessions, like these ones, where artists lead practical sessions exploring an element of their practice that benefits from making together and participation. There were also moving image screenings where artists and curators showed video works or project documentation, and one of my very favourite places to hang out, the Camp Shop and Miniatures exhibition, where artists and curators bring small-scale, affordable artworks, limited editions and ephemera for sale, alongside an informal exhibition of scaled-down or more portable aspects of their practice.
So we know from our experiences and from the outcomes of both versions of Jamboree to date that when artists and curators spend focused time together, share practice, concerns, hopes, frustrations, desires, good things happen. New ideas, new connections, new friendships, supportive networks and opportunities. People meet up, they stay at each other's homes, they programme each other's work, they make invitations, they make recommendations, they cheerlead, they become fans, they support, they look out for each other, they have each other's backs. So we're already seeing these outcomes happening from Jamboree 2018. So for example, we imagine that we're here, partly because of that, or because of that, having met Thomas at the event. And we're getting feedback from other participants who are busy presenting workshops and doing talks and showing work that they tested at Jamboree, hanging out with each other, commissioning each other, and that's really exciting. So we hope that those types of productive networks can also form out of an event like this. So later we'll come back to some of those ideas through our provocation. But for now, what we'd like to do is offer you guys to ask questions about any of these projects or how else we operate as artists and human beings. And then if there's time at the end, we'd just like to play you a song to finish on as we go out for lunch, and just to explain that we've launched a commission today with the National Trust, which is exciting because it's like the point where you actually get to put the work into the world, because we make art as well. I forgot to say that, we don't just make arts-led projects, we actually make art. And so there's a commission that we've made with the National Trust, which has been launched today as part of their Women in Power programme, which marks the centenary of suffrage and votes for women. Project's called For Me, For Her, For You. Is that the right order?
Correct. That's exactly what it's called.
And it's an audio artwork, which kind of forms like an album. So it's like 7-track artwork that we've made in collaboration with Neil Rose, who's a composer, sound artist, and the public. So people have contributed to helping us make that work. And so we'll play you a track at the very end, if that's okay. We commissioned 3 singer-songwriters as part of the project to make new protest songs for us. And one of the groups that did that is a band called Suck My Culture, who are based in Plymouth. So we'd like to play that song to finish on. So, but for now, if anyone's got any questions,
who would like to ask us?
No pressure.
Got tips on, so obviously you're approaching beautiful spaces and things, and tips for how to go about that sort of thing back here on.
One of the things that we learned earlier on was to say that we were a studio of graphic designers, and that we would like to run our graphic design studio out of an old shop. And then they were like, yeah, no worries, let's talk about how much the rent is and things like that. So sometimes it might be about putting things into a language that doesn't scare off the people who you're talking about, but without compromising what you actually want to do there and what you actually agree can happen there. So that allowed us to, like, being a design studio or something, whatever it was that Andy lied to them with, helped at least get in the first step, so that then we could sign a rental agreement, do those kind of things. So that's maybe one way.
Yeah, and with that space that Rachel was talking about, which is called DXDX Studio, we just got enough people together where we would be able to afford to split the rent, and made agreements between each other, and then just phoned the stage and just phoned the people that were, renting it basically. So we didn't get any good, we didn't get any special deal or anything like that. And then other spaces will be like non-permission based, so kind of like commandeering kind of spaces like libraries and spaces like, so we both work in an education institution, so kind of libraries there, or kind of booking meeting rooms and then holding our own non-work meetings in there. We've also been really lucky for the last few years where through our membership at Pack Home, RIP, it's now gone unfortunately, which is the associate scheme as part of Plymouth Arts Centre we had a free studio space. So they have like a kind of communal like space as part of that membership scheme.
You pay your membership and you get
and that's basically where we've been working for the last couple of years. And now we work out about homes and camps and things like that. But it's nomadic.
Stuff like the camping residency. So like with the campsites, essentially we just were looking online for a campsite where you can have fires and where you can have your own space. So like that campsite Hull Station, we didn't at any point say, oh, we're artists, we're going to be doing these things. They just thought that these people had turned up to have a kind of like family holiday-ish thing, and it was like one of those places where you had your own little clearing in the woods kind of thing. So it suited us really well.
With Come to Ours, that was in direct, like some of the projects also do the fireplaces in my house, so I just said yes to myself. With the badges, that was like approaching the landlords and like just building up really good relationships with those landlords. They were amazing, they totally got into the project, loved it. Steve would be phoning me up saying, we've stolen out badges, can we have that other badge now? We're a bit bored with this
the
one.
dance team all want them, so you've got to get them all around.
Then this exhibition part, the library and the circle exhibition, that was in a kind of like just classic type of redevelopment space that then sits empty. So spaces that are kind of meant to be for offices that then no one takes on because they're just like a little bit of town, and just negotiating with the landlord directly some cheap deals around reduced rates and things like that, because we're only going to be there for a few months and they're otherwise not going to have anyone in there. So it's better than nothing.
Sleep, yeah, I love sleeping. Hannah sleeps
I
less
got
than
4
I do.
hours last night, but that's because I got 2 year old.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've got quite good at over time is being a lot better at taking breaks and taking time off. The first like large scale thing that we did together really nearly broke both of us and broke relationships and broke everything. And so we like learned the hard way to never be in that situation again. So definitely taking holidays, not working every evening and every single hour of the day, and
Yeah, so also throughout the 15 years that we've worked together, the patterns of our work have changed a lot. So I think it's important to say that, because it doesn't just, the way you work changes, I suppose. So there would have been points where we were working like full time because I would have been doing like my MA or something. Times when we could live a bit more precariously maybe. And now times where I've been working 3 days a week, now I'm working 4 days a week. There were times when we decided, there was a time when I worked a full-time job, but I negotiated with them that I could do the hours in 4 days, and so I'd work extra long days so that I could have the one day, and we'd work together in that one day, and then
we'd have like half of Saturday.
Then we also work together
as
on
well.
Saturdays in the evening, and then super stuff like that you do, but at certain points that maybe you're up for doing that, and now I'm not up for doing that.
And in the current way that we work together on a Monday evening doing all our admin and our emails, and then we work together usually on a Thursday, so we have 1 day a week where we work together, which becomes really quite tricky when you're trying to make work, do lots of things, and then trying to plan big stuff at the same time. But then once you've written the application for the big stuff, so then
get 3 months,
12
weeks.
Then you get 12 weeks of, and
to do other projects.
12 weeks to make your own work. And then we always write in to pay ourselves in those projects.
And
So-
now, quite often, more often than not, to pay producers to work with us as well. So, for example, at the moment we're working on a project called You Have Arrived, which is in partnership with an organisation called Take a Part in Plymouth, and we just know that we don't have the capacity to kind of project manage a lot of the logistics that project needs. So through that bid, we'll write in a producer as well as paying ourselves artist fee, and also write in like Rachel at Gig as like delivering the education workshop. So just understanding our capacity, I think, and trying to like build that into the projects that like. But I've been talking to artists a lot about this recently in my curatorial role, and thinking about like the restrictions that artists around your practice, and rather than seeing them as like a negative thing, seeing them as a kind of interesting kind of creative fuel. So like the fact that we work together like 1 day a week is like a massive restriction, but then it's like, well, that is also the parameters in which we operate. And you kind of
And then we just
work
work
with
really
that.
hard at that time, rather than like farting around. It just becomes really precious. So.
You may have already answered the question. Over the 15 years you've been working together, what would you say is your biggest challenge that you've ever faced?
biggest challenge.
Biggest challenge.
So that question was, what was the biggest challenge we faced over the last 15 years?
I used to lose my voice a lot.
Yeah, I
That's quite
think
challenging.
probably the balance of kind of work, life. There's those pressures around kind of like us both juggling other jobs, and the points where we're having to have really frank and honest conversations with each other, which can be really difficult, where it's like, I'm going to have to take this job, or I'm going to have to work full time, or I'm going to have to go back to doing 4 days a week now, or I'm pregnant. Sorry,
I'm moving away.
I'm gonna
for
live in a
period
different
of time,
country,
live in
yeah.
a different country or a different place. Like we have lived in different countries from each other for periods of time. We've lived in different towns from each other for periods of time. So I guess those things from the outside are probably quite large challenges, but I guess part of our working together has always been that kind of honesty and it being based around conversation and it being based around like looking after each other and looking out for each other. So so I guess those things from the outside are probably the biggest challenges.
Yeah, because I think you have a sense, we both feel like a really big sense of responsibility, not in a bad way, to each other. So, you know, those job questions, for example, I'm not just making those decisions for myself, I'm also making them in response to I'm thinking about practice and Rachel and my husband and my kids.
Yeah.
So there's like, you suddenly feel like you have a lot of responsibilities for a lot of people. It's not just, you know, you're not just, you know, I'm not able to make those decisions just on my own, but that's okay because we just have a really kind of like open and honest kind of conversation about like how the hell do we do this? How do we find a way to keep going? You know, that's what I mean about our working patterns changing. Understanding that that's not going to be the same from 1 year to the next or 1 month to the next, and just being like really bloody good at planning time, essentially.
We've got time for 1 or 2 more questions before we so.
Hi, I just wanted to ask 2 questions. Is Jamboree going to happen next year? And if so, I've got an Asco in the shape of a toddler, and I was wondering if the kids come.
So we're hoping it's going to happen in 2020, not next year, because we realised that our capacity is not possible to do it every year. Also, just in terms of fundraising. So we worked out. So that was in July, wasn't it? End of July.
And then like 3 weeks afterwards, we worked out how if we started setting up the partnerships for 2020, 3 weeks after we delivered that one, that we'd just be able to deliver it in time. So it's like, because we're working, and this time we want to be more ambitious and have far more bursaries and work with far more different partners around the country. So yeah, even doing it when we originally did this big one, we were like, and we'll do one 3 years afterwards. We were like, that's the least amount of time it would take us. So we streamlined it down to 2 because everyone got so excited.
But yeah, we need
bring
to
in
submit
toddlers,
don't we, by the end of February, so that we can have the money April, May, end of May, so that we can start in June and then it's a year to delivery.
So the best way to bring your toddler with you is to also bring somebody else as your toddler's chaperone who doesn't need to buy a ticket. And that's the hard part, is probably finding the chaperone for the toddler.
But that's what people do.
But that's what we have as a way to do that, because we found it really hard to actually set up a creche or things like that. But we're really happy for people to bring their kids so long as they've got somebody else to help chaperone them, because you'll want to spend your time doing the stuff as well. There's one.
I was just going to ask, because you said, oh, and I also have an upright.
Yeah.
Also have an and yeah, how do you find that, like, and talking about all of that together or separately, and when people ask you to do things, like which bits of it that you apply, you know, because we find that really difficult as well.
Yeah.
So I think we've had these conversations a lot around whether or not Jamboree is or not.
Whether it matters. Yeah.
What we do know is that, what we applied to Jamboree was our hands on it. So like the decision making that, you know, around kind of, you know, how people were looked after at the event, you know, the patches that we made, the free snacks, like everything about kind of like that we thought about in terms of the tiny details around that project was the approach that we would take to anything that we make. And so we really wanted it to be clear that it had our hands on it, that this was the sort of thing that, you know, that we would make. And for us, it absolutely sits as part of our practice. Generally, in terms of the work that we make, we're interested in ideas of community and groups and bringing people together. And we don't always make participatory work, but quite kind of, we do make participatory work. We make work with other people in different ways, in different shapes and forms. And so for us, it really makes sense as project that sits in our practice, and that we, you know, in the same way that when you go to our website, you see the National Trust project, then you see Jamboree, then you see the project that we made with the Freddie Mercury impersonator, and they're all like next to each other, and they're not categorised in that way. For other projects like Come to Ours, the artwork part that we made for that project was the badge project, Would You Like This Badge, which was the pub project. So Come to Ours was the framework to insert our work into. And we were kind of, I suppose, quite smart about doing that. So we're like, we can commission ourselves through this project, through setting up this project. And so sometimes it's the frame, and sometimes it's the kind of more very closely aligned to, I guess, the ethos of the work and what we're interested in.
And I also think that through our time of working together like this far, one of the things that peaks and troughs at different times is like how bothered we are about whether other people see what we do as an art or not as an art, because we are like following our noses to a certain extent, and we're pursuing things that we're interested in and that we feel that we need to do at those particular times, and that we feel are exciting for us to do and like invest our time in. So I guess quite early on that idea of like, how do we measure if this is successful, if we are successful, and we realised we would need to ditch off other people's measures and just create our own, and that those might shift and change as we as human beings shift and change. Somebody wants to get in.
Someone's at the door.
That's we almost like that.
Right.
Is that okay? It's time for a punk
Yeah.
song.
Time for a punk song.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah.
Woo woo! I'll seamlessly, in a really punk way, get this working. Yeah, super pro.
So if you follow us on Instagram, that'd be nice. And then we've just launched a project on Instagram today. But if you otherwise just Google, I don't know, low profile Plymouth, you'll find our website. And then on that, there's the links to listening to the project in full on the National Trust website, or you can click to download it via Bandcamp, so you can listen to it on your headphones. I really recommend listening to it on your headphones.
Yeah, it's really nice. And this is what ends the whole piece. So we got the National Trust to publish today this.
Can you make it loud? Yeah.
It's like, well, not yeah, it will get loud. It will get loud.
Very close to the speaker.
Yeah.
We just go on to lose, to what we didn't choose. Hear our voices, stand by, for our voices are right. We just go on to lose, to what we didn't choose. Hear our voices, stand by, for our voices are right. I can start the battle, but that war is not yet won. The fight has changed, but it also remains progressive and lifestyle. Still waiting for discrimination. What's up with the matter on fire? Take back what we're entitled to. Respect is not being had. We can say it's not what we did, you get up there.
Nice thing, isn't it? We have to send it to the
You can go to that.